Today we're going to talk about woolen dryer balls. How to use them, how they work, and some things you probably should be aware of. First of all, what on earth is woolen dryer balls? Essentially, it is balls that you... by the way, I pledge to not make any testicle jokes in this video. It's going to be very hard. Anyway, let's get started here. So dryer balls, they are essentially balls that you toss in with your laundry. As you're drying it in your dryer. The dryer ball is going to bounce in between all the clothes as they're spinning so that the heat can get in between, like in the small pockets here, dry your clothes faster essentially. Some people say that you can reduce drying time by up to 25% using these dryer balls. Now obviously there is going to be an upfront cost when you buy dryer balls. They are usually between $3 or so for one, maybe less if you buy cheap ones. I do, however, recommend buying some proper ones. We're going to talk more about that later. So yeah, there is an upfront investment, but you will save it in over time since your drying time will be reduced by 25% each time you dry your clothes. Also on top of that, you can skip the dryer sheets. I wager you could also skip the fabric softener if you use these ones. And yeah, they're fantastic. Obviously all natural, just wool here. There is nothing toxic in them. They don't smell like they don't smell like anything. So if you want to have them smell, add a little bit of smell like you would with dryer sheets, you will need to add that yourself. One more cool thing about this is that they actually absorb a little bit of water themselves. We're going to dunk them in some water before we toss them into the dryer here, because they work more effectively if they're just a little bit wet. You can also just spray them down with a little spray bottle with water if you so desire. They also have plastic versions of these balls. I generally don't recommend those because when they're in the dryer, you can kind of hear them bounce around like dong, 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 dong all over. Imagine if you forgot to take out your wallet or something before you toss it in a dryer. That's the sound that would end up. It's not really bad for your dryer at all. They can handle this no problem, but it's more for your own sanity. Also, you can't really add scent to the plastic ones. These wooden ones, however, we are going to add a little bit of lavender to them to make our laundry smell really relaxing and nice. Maybe I'll fall asleep by the end of the video here. Usually you can get away with, this is what I would call a pretty medium load here. 3 to 4 of these dryer balls, usually perfect for this amount of clothes. If you have a very big load, you want to maybe add a couple of more. One thing to keep in mind though with the bigger loads is that these need a little bit of room to work and bounce around. If they're just going to be locked in one place, first of all, your dryer isn't going to be effective if it's too full. Secondly, these are also going to be way less effective since they can't move around and make those air pockets in between all the clothes that are moving. I think we're just going to get started here. I'm going to show you how to use these things. So I've loaded up here, as you can see. Next thing we can do here is add a little bit of scent to these dryer balls. So there is one thing you need to know about adding scents to drying balls. That is essentially that stuff like this, essential oils, their flash points is actually lower than the temperature that your dryer actually can reach. So don't use too much of it. Generally, I have found that 2 drops is totally fine on each ball. If you're going to use a lot of balls, you may want to go down to 1 drop. Also, you don't need to add any scent to them at all if you don't want to. I like it, and you don't need to do it every time, by the way. Every 3rd or 4th time is probably plenty if you use 2 drops on each. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm just going to add a little bit of lavender directly onto the ball. Now you can add this in a little bit of spray like this one and just spray it directly on there. Once you have added your scent, if so desired, to your balls, what we're going to do is that we're just going to dunk them quickly into the water. This is plenty. Then you can toss them directly in here with your laundry. Don't make them too wet. It doesn't matter if they are wet, but just dunk them in there is fine. And for the sharp ones of you probably gather that you can actually just spray them down. If you have that spray bottle, you can add a little bit of lavender in there and you can just spray them down so they're wet. Then you can skip over the whole bucket part. So why did we add water to the drying balls? Well, essentially it helps reduce the static that's generated. You know, if you use a dryer sheet, usually you put a little bit of water on them. This is going to help the same way. Have a lot of synthetics in here. They cause a lot of statics as well. That's one thing I could note actually. If you don't want static along with the other clothes, perhaps take the synthetics and do them on their own. Also, this is going to help reduce the creasing on your clothes. You don't need to iron them that much, and obviously it's going to help with the drying time. Anyway, let's close up the dryer here. The next thing that we're going to do here is that we're going to turn on the dryer. Now my dryer has a sensor that actually stops the drying process once the clothes are dry. Now if you don't have one of these sensors, what you can do instead is simply follow, like pay a little bit of attention to your clothes, maybe check a couple of times once it approaches that last fourth of the drying time. So if your dryer takes an hour, perhaps at 45 minutes, you want to start checking and see if your clothes are already dry. Anyway, I am going to just start it here, like that. And that's going to take care of itself. Let me just pause it to finish up the video. So a few things to note here. I recommend that you go with some of the more costly dryer balls. Now, they don't have to be super expensive. I'm going to add some links to my favorite down in the video description. That will be paid links, so if you use them, I appreciate it, as you will support the channel. Also going to link to the lavendel. The problem with the cheap dryer balls is that sometimes the hair, like since it's just a ball of wool, they will start to disintegrate a little bit. This can be a problem with new dryer balls as well, just a couple of first times that they start to shed a little bit of their wool. So in those cases, maybe it's advisable for you to just dry white clothes or bright clothes the first couple of times, because then you won't see the wool on the clothes. Like the black shirt, it will stick out very clearly, right? And if your balls start to shed a lot, what you can do is put them in, for example, a delicate bag and toss them into the washing machine. Give them a hot wash. That's going to help kind of tighten up the wool and reduce the shedding as well. And after you're done using these balls, it is nice to store them somewhere dry. You know, you don't want them to start getting moldy and then they start to smell and you toss them in with your clothes and your clothes end up being moldy, smelling. I usually just use the bag they came with. That's totally fine. You can also just put them in a little bit of a container to the side. You want to treat it like normal wool. Next video, I'm going to show you my favorite laundry detergent that is so cost effective and so eco-friendly compared to some of like the liquid ones or pods or even powdered. I'm going to link it here once it's done. It's not done at this point, but when it is, it's going to be linked right here. I recommend you check that out next. Hope you liked this video. Again, if you want to support the channel, there are links right below the video. And yeah, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.